Well, greetings. Recently, a company called Prisual, I think, reached out and asked if I would take a look at their PTZ camera. And that is kind of the bread and butter of this channel, so I thought, why not? I haven't done one in a while. And this one seems to check all the boxes. So let's get it out of its box and see what's going on here. Oh, it's upside down. All right, so here's what you get the box. Let's get through some of the basics. You get a power adapter, as you would expect. Now, usually these are kind of a brick type, you know, where you've got the cord that goes into the brick and then the power cable comes out of that. This is a wall wart type, which is fine, you know, depends on what you need, I suppose. It does come with all of the international adapters for it, which is great if you happen to need those, or if you're ordering this from outside the United States and you're wondering, oh my gosh, is it going to come with my right adapter? It does come with those. It also comes with a USB cable. This is a USB-C because that's what's on the back of the camera, and we'll talk about that in a minute. To kind of a USB-A. The one thing I like about this is the USB-C cable has a mount on it, or a screw on it, to screw it into the back of the camera and affirm that it's there and make sure it doesn't come out again. I have not seen that feature on a camera yet. I don't know how common it is for these to fall out, but especially if you're going to put it up somewhere remote and access it through USB, I mean, I guess it's nice to know that that's secure, so that's kind of cool. Also, we got a camera mount, which is good. The other thing I liked about this is it came with this bag of screws, and I wasn't sure what they were for, and there you go with this camera mount. On the bottom of the camera, you can not only mount it through kind of the standard camera mount right there, but it's got this little point on it that goes into the back of the camera, and then these little screws screw in through the bottom into the camera to orient, keep it from, you know, twisting or moving on you, which is huge when you're putting these things up away somewhere where you want them to not get touched or messed with. If you're going to do a lot of presets and stuff, it's critical that they stay in place. And other than just like screwing the one center screw down really tight, I've actually not seen any other solutions for making sure that they don't get jostled or reoriented on the stand until this. So actually, I like that feature. That's kind of neat. The camera, the remote, I should say, is the standard remote that tends to come with these ones. There's a slightly nicer version of this that I've seen out there with some of the cameras, but this one works, and, you know, for basic duty, your remote's fine, but you're probably not going to use it, but it's here if you need it, so there you go. All right, the camera itself, it's got a little heft to it. You know, I think there's a metal base down here, so that's nice. The camera barrel is a little short. It reminds me of the one on the Smart AV that actually launched this whole channel. Which is fine. This is, I believe, their 20x zoom version, so you don't need a lot of room in there for lenses to move back and forth. And if you have any kind of, you know, restrictions on your space or whatever, the smaller one can be fine. In the front, you get very prominently their name, which you can pronounce how you like. Standby, power, kind of the common stuff. The aesthetic, I would say, is pleasant. I think it would look fine in any environment. It's got a nice black and gray thing going on here. Sure, why not? On the bottom, you've got the basic information. You've got that standard camera mount, which is nice to have. And then you've got the little bitty screw holes right here to secure that base on securely. And then that spot on the bottom where that little nubbin goes on the mount to make sure this gets in place and stays in place. So that's pretty neat. All right, around back to the party piece, the part that we probably care about the most. Let's talk about ports. It's got the ones you would expect. You got a network port, which is good, you know, for remote controlling this over network, you know, through Visca or whatever you're going to use. So you've got that. You've got an HDMI. This is a 1080p camera, not 4K, but it's 1080p, so you need HDMI, which is great. You got your kind of older RS ports, your RS-232 and your RS-435. You're probably never going to use those, that's fine. You've got a 12 volt power in, like I showed you before, but this will do PoE, so that's not necessary if you're going to power it through here. And that's about it. So you get a line in for your audio, which in these kinds of setups is intended to use a lot. There's no built-in microphone on this camera, but there never are on these things, so that's not necessarily a big deal, but you've got it if you want. What you don't have is you don't have an SDI. So if you're more of an SDI shop than an HDMI shop, then, you know, keep that in mind. But otherwise, you've got kind of all the stuff that I would expect to see, though you can also see no physical power button. A lot of the power buttons people are getting away from those, and oftentimes what you're going to do, because these things are mounted in far off places, is you're just going to switch the power from the either from the AC power in or from the PoE. That tends to be how that works. So on the whole, I would say it's a nice little package. It is what I would expect to see. Nothing super revolutionary, but also a really solid one that's got, you know, I'd say a fairly decent aesthetic design to it, which is good. And you get a lens cap cover. So there you are. And there it is. All right, well, let's hook this up to some testing, and we'll see how its audio, not its audio, but how its video looks. All right, so pardon the interruption. I just want to give you a little clue as to how channels like this work, especially those of us who work in more niche content. The YouTube ad revenue is literally pennies and not how I primarily support this channel. I do it through Amazon affiliate links. Now here's the thing, when you click on one of the Amazon affiliate links below in the description, even if you don't buy the exact product that I am linking to, if you buy something in that experience and you start by clicking on one of my links, then I get a little cut of it. It doesn't cost you anything. That's Amazon paying it out of Amazon share. The only other way to make this work is to do things like sponsored or advertised content, which I don't want to do because I want to offer objective information and advice to you. So please check the links below if you're interested in anything you've seen here today. And even if you come back later, use those links, buy your products, enjoy what you buy, help me out. Thank you. All right, so let me run you through my standard testing setup here. I've got the camera on the workbench. I've got it plugged into a HDMI capture. This is a 4K capture, so it's more than up to task to capture the 1080p out of this. And then I'm going to be recording the test footage onto OBS in full 1080p. I've also got a industry standard color test card that helps both test the color resolution and the focusing on its little tiny lines that are on there. And then we'll compare that to another camera that frankly I just had sitting around, and I don't honestly remember what it is, but it is functionally comparable to this guy in terms of its features and everything else, and we'll see if we notice any difference. So first, let's just capture some basic video with the color test. All right, so just looking at it on the screen right now, I can tell you the colors look pretty decent. We've still got some separation on top of the red area, which is a place that sometimes gives cameras some trouble. And all in all, it looks pretty good. The autofocusing also seems to be working pretty well. As you can see, this isn't doing this from any kind of great distance by any means. So for some cameras, this is almost best case scenario, but it's nice to see a reasonable amount of quality. Now, when we start to do our zoom tests, as I zoom in, I can see it's keeping focus okay, and then it's gonna have to do a little focus looking at the end, which it does a good job of. Some of, especially the less expensive cameras, struggle sometimes, especially when you kind of get this up close and personal with actually maintaining the zoom, but this one did a pretty good job of it, so I would say on the whole, I am happy with that. All right, so let's take a look at the on-screen menus. This is the menu options that it's sending out through its own HDMI, and you access through the remote. I have seen this menu system before on a lot of cameras. It's solid, it works, no complaints from me on that one. You've got exposure, image, color, like you would expect, some basic PTZ controls. If you want to get into like the nuance of how the PTZ is actually working, most people will never use that. A little bit of noise reduction. You know, again, probably not something you're going to touch unless you're running into some issues around it. Setup. So this is where you can see like what video format you're using, which you may want to change to say P50 if you're in Europe, which is the standard there, but otherwise you're going to be P60 if you are in the United States. Again, optionally, not probably going to do much with this, and that's okay. There is an option in there to turn the audio off, which if you're not going to use, can be a nice thing to do, just because it avoids it causing any possible issues down the road, introducing any audio into the system that maybe you don't want it to be there. Communication setup. Now this is just for you know, your Visca controls or your Pelco or you know, whatever you're using to control it. Most people are not going to necessarily touch this all that much because you're going to control it through your network interface, and that's fine. And then finally, AI mode. A lot of these cameras now are offering what they're calling AI mode, that I don't think there's actually any real AI in the way that we talk about it, but it can do basic tracking of subjects in a couple of different ways. There is frame and there is track. Now, there is actually nothing in the instruction manual about AI mode or how it works, because obviously the instruction manuals were probably all printed before this camera had its AI function. But in general, the tracking is, you know, to keep a person in the frame, giving you a little bit of freedom of movement, or a more detailed track where it will track you a little, try to keep you in the center of the frame. The only other kind of disappointing thing that I see about this camera is its network setup. It uses what is kind of an older school version of network setup, where it comes pre-programmed with an IP address that is built into it that you have to accommodate. In this case, 192.168.100.88 if you were interested, which again was fairly standard a few years ago. Other manufacturers have figured out other ways of doing this that I think are a little bit more helpful. Some of them have automatic IP addresses where you just plug it in and it, you know, it gets itself an IP address like honestly every other network connected device does. And then through the on-screen guide will tell you what that IP address is, because you need to know at least initially what the IP address is in order to access it. All right, well, speaking of all of that, let's take a minute and get hooked up into the computer and see what that web interface looks like. All right, so here we are logged in to our camera in the back end. Again, 192.168.100.88, admin, password, and username as you would expect. And once again, an interface I've seen before because a lot of these use the same kind of commodity components, and that's fine. You know, it works then. So you've got your video format options. You got a little better formatting options here for your video. You can adjust your image if you're not quite getting the brightness or the saturation or the contrast you want. This can be helpful, being able to do this. Again, you know, hopefully you've got an environment where the lighting isn't changing too much and you can kind of set it and forget it. That's fine. It is nice to be able to flip things. So say you mount this camera upside down from the ceiling, that's an option. So you might want to flip it or mirror it for whatever is going on. Again, your audio if you want, system, network, network. So here's where you're probably going to come in here and change what's going on as far as how it is getting its IP address. So interestingly, this has shipped with dynamic IP address, and yet here is a static IP address right there. Kind of odd, but sure. And then some basic port setting stuff and all of that. Probably not going to use it, but it's there. This does have NDI, which is great to see. I love me some NDI. So it's not quite caught on the way I thought it might, but it is helpful if you need it. So you can give it a name, probably something a little bit more descriptive than this, just because you have more than one camera, that's not really going to work. But MDI is there, and then just some general information about what it is, some basic controls of the camera if you want to control it through here, similar to what you can do with the remote. And then kind of tacked onto the bottom is the tracking settings, and again, tracking on and off, and then the two kinds of tracking, track or frame, with no real additional information given about what that means. So you're gonna have to play with it a little bit, and again, sure, why not? All right, so the Prisual PT20XN, what do we think? Honestly, it's a solid entry into the PTZ market, and really kind of an embodiment of how far we have come. This is a fully remote controllable 20x PTZ camera with built-in NDI that is currently selling on Amazon for $379. This channel was launched 6 years ago when I bought a camera not as capable of this for $700 and thought I was getting the bargain of the century. And now here we are just a few years later at almost half the cost with a whole lot of extra additional features. So a lot of what this is coming down for you, the consumer, is trying to balance out what it is that you need. If you are going to use this in kind of a set it or forget it location where you're just going to put it up somewhere, turn it on when you need it and turn it off when you don't, and not really touch it or move it all that much, this might be a great option. Because despite that little niggle with the network setup being a little antiquated by today's standards, you're only going to have to deal with that once, and then after that, you just kind of want it to sit there. So the fact that it doesn't have a power button is fine, that you've got the basic remote, that's the same remote that they all use, is fine, and the fact that you have NDI access to it as well is a great feature if you need that now or down the line in the future. So the colors and the optics look good. That's one of the things you're doing when you're buying a camera like this, is you're getting a camera that has real lenses in it that really move when you zoom. You're not just doing like digital zoom and kind of cheating it in the way that you can do with kind of some lower end streaming cameras. So I still think this is, like all of these cameras, a great option for kind of professional or kind of semi-professional environment, again, for churches or schools. Classrooms is a good one, especially with that AI auto tracking, assuming it functions well for you in your environment. And like a lot of cameras, like all cameras, you know, they like light. So it's good to be in a lit place, and all those kind of standard caveats apply. But if you are considering the Prisual 20x NDI PTZ camera, I would say go for it. At that price point, go for it, give it a chance, see how it works. And if it doesn't work all that great, you can always take advantage of Amazon's generous return policy, assuming you buy with Amazon with maybe one of the links in the description to support this channel. I don't know, maybe you could, sure, why not? All right, well, thank you for joining me, and until I see you again, have a great day.